you know, I've been reading the comments on the video, and it's quite interesting because it's now been, what, 20 plus years since I was in the Land Rover Sophia, driving one and being in that group, and having stepped out of it and driven for myself Mercedes-Benz and Toyotas during that period of time. And now stepping back into it, and I'm reading the comments, and what I find it quite interesting. The people that complain about Land Rovers being unreliable are not Land Rover owners. I'm Andrew St. Pierre White. Join me as I share my passion for building four-wheel drive trucks and travelling to the remotest parts of the world. These videos are made possible by contributions from Patreons. Join the Patreon family now. 99% of them have never owned a Land Rover. And if they did, they had a fleeting association with the Land Rover and it didn't go that well, and so now they have a reason to have a go at them. The people that criticise Land Rovers for unreliability are using it as a stick to beat people that like Land Rovers. Nobody on the planet, especially Land Rover owners, will say that a Land Rover, generally speaking, is more reliable than, say, a Toyota. Nobody driving a Volvo or a Jaguar or a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz or a whatever is going to say my vehicle is more reliable than a Toyota. Because it's not, because Toyotas lead the world in car reliability, closely matched by some other manufacturers. Land Rover is not one of those manufacturers. And I read the comments and I see this kind of, what is it, petty jealousy? You know, they criticize the idea that I bought a Range Rover because it's not going to be reliable. Hang on a minute. If you buy a 45-year-old car, period, you're not buying it for its reliability. If reliability is the single most important thing in your life, then you buy a new Toyota. Okay, I buy new Toyotas for my overlanding work because not only are they reliable, but that's not my primary reason for buying the 70 Series Land Cruiser. I buy a 70 Series Land Cruiser because it's basic, simple, not too electronic. The only time it ever beeps is when I leave the handbrake up. That's it. There are no other times where it goes beep for no apparent reason. So it isn't a brand thing. This isn't about a brand thing. This is not a brand thing. The best thing ever. The catalyst for getting another one was born in Wales in 2016 when I drove one on Pennine Sands. I just want to drive into the sea. It relit the fire. Oh, what a day, what a day, what a day. It's a two-door Range Rover, and I had a love affair with them many years ago. You'll never forget your first love. And here I am, I've got one again. The Range Rover featured in this story is not my second, but third Range Rover Classic. My second one I bought in 1999. It was a 96 model with a soft dash, and I loved it because it was a Range Rover Classic. But it wasn't very good at doing what I needed a four-wheel drive to do. It was pretty good off-road, very comfortable on the open road, but there was always a niggle, always something in the back of my head saying, you know, if that compressor pump fails, the suspension collapses because it has air suspension, front and back. You're done for. You can't repair it. I sold it after only 15 months. And I swapped it for, the second love of my life, a 290 Geländewagen. And it's one of those that, if I have the choice, will be my next big project. I drove this car after working on it for actually 2.5 days. It was in 2.5 days that we did the stuff that had to be done, and actually we could have driven it across but for one thing, and that was the fuel system, which had been butchered. If it was the original fuel system that had not been touched or changed in any way, the chances are, and I think the chances are probably 80 to 90% sure, that I could have got in this 45-year-old car, the least reliable car in the world.
It turns out that the most unreliable car in the world is the most reliable car in the world.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you.
And driven it right across Australia without any difficulty at all. So you guys having a go at Land Rover for their reliability, we know they're not that reliable. We know. Give it a rest. They're very interesting cars. When this was developed and brought out in 1970, it wasn't just an interesting car, it was a revolutionary car. It was one of the most important cars of all time.
From here, we are facing the real desert, and cars must be checked carefully to ensure that there will be no mishaps. Perhaps not as carefully as this, because this expedition is engaged on the desert testing of a new model, and the mechanics have all sorts of sophisticated equipment with them. Tires receive especial care, for no normal journey is as tough as this desert crossing, where temperatures will vary between 120 degrees Fahrenheit and freezing point in 24 hours.
And in terms of four-wheel drive, it was the most important car of all time, because what it did, it introduced four-wheel drive to ordinary people. Because up until this point, four-wheel drive was available to farmers and people working in the lands that needed four-wheel drive to operate. And they would drive very, very uncomfortable, very rudimentary Land Rovers and Toyota Land Cruisers, and occasionally Nissan Patrols, and occasionally Suzukis. All of these vehicles were very rudimentary and very, very basic. And along comes a manufacturer and says, hang on a minute, we think that the general population would like the idea of a four-wheel drive. The idea of a four-wheel drive. They might not need it that much, but they would like the idea of a four-wheel drive. So let's make a four-wheel drive that's a lot more comfortable than all of the other four-wheel drives we've ever made. Ta-da! Give you the Range Rover. That's what it is. That's what it did. That's what it started. Okay. And it was so successful that all these other manufacturers said, ooh, we better get a chunk of that. And they started producing cars as good, if not better. But now better. Let's ask this question. Better. Better than the Range Rover. I don't think they're better than the Range Rover, because if you think about the Range Rover now, it is grown up to become a very sophisticated, complicated, and extremely expensive vehicle. Let's have a look at vehicles that are the same price as the Range Rover now is. S-Class Mercedes, but hold on, that's not four-wheel drive. Let's have a look at, let's think about cars that are in the same genre, similar price. Q7 Audi, BMW X, a revolting X6 and X5, and the Bentley. Are any of them as versatile as the Range Rover? None of them necessarily are better on-road, maybe a little bit better on-road, maybe. I mean, a new Range Rover is spectacular on-road. It is an amazing machine. And yet you take any of those vehicles to the Alps and somewhere where it gets sticky, and I'm not talking about expeditions. I'm talking about driving these vehicles on an everyday basis, using them as an everyday car, and I now need to cross a field, I now need to get up a mountain slope and it's been snowing and it's icy. Which of all of those is the best performer? There is no contest. The Range Rover is the best, by far, by a long way. It's so much better than its competitors. And the reason for that is that Land Rover is one of the few manufacturers that have focused their whole being on making a four-wheel drive system that really works when it gets difficult. I'm not talking about expedition work because they're hopeless at expedition. Four-wheel drive and off-road and expedition, there is a bit of an overlap, but it's not that big. Because the moment you go expedition, you have to have tyres that can be easily replaced in remote areas. Four-wheel drive, off-road ability that is compromised because you've got large, high-profile tyres, which compromises the on-road ride. So Land Rover are now going 18, I think the smallest they make is 18 on the Defender, and then 20 inches on the Discovery, and then 22 inches, if I'm correct, on cars like the Range Rover.
The routine for an expedition across the Sahara means rising with the first light. Clocks mean nothing. You're up by 6 in the morning. Breaking camp takes a good hour, and then you're on the way again.
This is not as good off-road as the new Range Rover, and yet it's got high-profile tyres. However, when it gets extreme, this will make mincemeat out of it. When it gets extreme, where the clearance of the new Range Rover is just plain not enough, because at the end of the day you have to have clearance. If you can't get the body away from the, and its solid axles does that. So independent suspension versus solid axles in extreme situations. This will it will knock it out of the park. Add differential locks to this as it is right now, it will knock any of those vehicles out of the park off-road. It'll knock most vehicles out of the park. And yet it's a 50-year-old design because they're stuck with the principles here. Long travel, coil spring suspensions. They never offered differential locks with the Range Rover until it was a very sophisticated vehicle and it needed differential locks, otherwise it would be hopeless off-road. And when I say differential locks, I'm also talking about traction control systems that automatically lock. In other words, you wanted control over the differentials with the ability to lock them. The vehicles became so sophisticated, the tyres became so ineffectual at gripping because you couldn't get that extra flotation by reducing the pressure much because of the low profile large size. And so what did they do? They took the on-road compromise of solid axles and they then swapped it for electronics. Did it do as good a job as solid axles? Up to a point, definitely. Up to a point, definitely. So if you think about my trip that I did in 2015, one of the most difficult off-road trips, wilderness trips I've ever done, you may know it, the Lesotho trip in an LR4. Now the Discovery 4 I think is an exceptional vehicle. And the reason why it's an exceptional vehicle is this. Exactly the same reason why this, in its time, was an exceptional vehicle. It took an ordinary station wagon, nice to drive around town, nice as a practical everyday driver, and yet could handle really tough off-road conditions, actually bordering the extreme. You take this vehicle now, and you take the LR4. Could this vehicle, in its current state as it is now, do the pass that I did, the Baboons Pass in Lesotho? And I say, yes it could, in its stock standard form. Would we have struggled as much? Yes, but with a different thing. We would have struggled with spinning opposite wheels, not with clearance issues as we did in the LR4. So I'm taking a 45-year-old vehicle and I'm saying it's as good as a modern vehicle in extreme off-road conditions. Take this vehicle and add axle lockers, it'll make mincemeat out of an LR4.
There are long stretches of the desert with nothing unusual to be seen. A desolate landscape with no distinct landmarks. In country like this, the modern explorers, the geologists and oil men, often travel by compass. They prefer their instruments even to the desert guides, who still use the sun, stars, and, as they say, the soles of their feet.
It's an incredible achievement, this vehicle. In the world of four-wheel drives, it was revolutionary. It is revolutionary. And I've got myself a very, very nice example of one. So from this point onwards, I hope you've enjoyed the series. Quite a few people have said to me, oh, you know, you're overthinking it. Yeah, you know, I reacted to one actually this morning. You're overthinking it, just drive it. Well, the thinking is, there are two types of people. One, when they sit down, they sit. Other people, and I consider myself one of this, in this category, when they sit down, they sit. And they also think. I'm telling a story, guys. This is my story. Yes, it's mine. And I'm grateful for the many, many people who have thoroughly and obviously thoroughly enjoyed watching the show. And I can tell you now, this has been the most fun I've had in years making a four-wheel drive series for 4xOverland. It really has. It's been amazing. Like the video, like the videos, subscribe if you haven't, what have you got to lose? But most of all, thank you for watching. Until the next time we do something with it, and I don't honestly know what that's going to be. Thank you so much for watching. These videos are made possible by contributions from Patreons. Join our Patreon family now.